Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's 100% Metroid Zero Mission. In the last part we got our powers back after doing a Metal Gear section, and now it's time for cleanup. We are going all across the world today just to get some extra missiles and such that way you're missing and we couldn't get before. So if you are here just to see how the game ends, wait for the next part, or go to the next part if it's already been released by the time this is, by the time you're watching it, which it likely is. So yeah. This is basically filler then. Admittedly, I mentioned it before, but Zero Mission, I remembered being pretty bad with going out of your way to get the rest of the items, but doing this, I realized it's not as bad as I remembered. Because I'm probably remembering more so my first playthrough of 100%, because I had to look for all the items my first time around, but now I know where most of them are, so it's just a matter of remembering how to get them. And it's a similar case with Fusion as well. I do think this game did it a bit better overall than Fusion, but Fusion had its own things going for it as well. Like it had the inter-area tunnels, which this game only really has 2 of, maybe 3. And I kind of miss the convenience. I can understand why they wouldn't be there from a storyline standpoint, though, because for some reason, there was a tunnel that went from, say, the mothership to Ridley. That would be a bit confusing in terms of world structure. At least the BSL station has the excuse of being a research lab. However, at the same time, at least in the case of this game, you also had to go out of your way for more in Fusion than I do here in Zero Mission. Because I'm going out of my way for, let's look at the totals I have right now. 2 energy tanks, I think about 3 or 4 missile tanks, about 5 super missiles, and 8 or 9 power bombs. Whereas in Super, I went on my way for quite a bit more, if I recall. Let me see if I can get the exacts. Yeah, 2 energy tanks, 4 missiles. At this point, 4 super missiles, and max is 18, so that's 16 power bombs missing. Yeah, 8 power bombs left. Most of them are in Chozodia. There is quite a few still out in the other world. Namely a power bomb and a missile tank over in Norfair, a missile tank in Kraid, and that's it actually outside of Chozodia. Actually, no, there's a few other things in Crateria as well. And as for how we get out there, we have to pull a Super Metroid. You might remember that glass tube between Meridia, in Meridia rather than Super Metroid? We have to do the exact same here. Break this glass tube with the power bomb, and now we have access to the rest of the world. I like that little reference. It's a very small thing, but it makes me smile. Either way, now I'm going to do a shortcut to get this power bomb here. You can shine spark up this hallway to get to it. One thing I forgot, though, is that if you stand on the pillar I was just next to, you can just shine spark up through the pillar that the power bomb is on because it's speed booster blocks. I didn't mind on the whole either way because I still got there pretty quickly, but that's there in case you want to use it. I will say in terms of how I'm going about getting everything, there are a few items in Chozodia I am saving for later just due to convenience's sake because I don't want to go out of my way too much to get them. Like, there's technically an energy tank right now right above me, but I'm going to wait to get that until later because I'm going to because I have to shine spark up there eventually anyway to get back to Chozodia proper for when I actually go back towards the final boss. We're not getting everything this part, we're just getting most of it. So now I basically have to think of tangents to go for the rest of the time. Let's see, what's happened recently in gaming history? Or nerd history in general. The Iron Fist Netflix series came out about 2 days ago at this point. Enjoying it so far. I think it's probably the weakest out of the 4. But it's more like it's like a 8 out of 10 instead of like a 9, 9.5 like Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and Daredevil were for me. Danny's kind of pissing me off a little bit, but that's just because he doesn't have much social experience outside that monastery. Don't like Ward too much, though. He annoys me. Fight scenes are pretty decent. I still think Daredevil had the best of those, but not bad, not bad. Okay, that got me through a minute, and now to think of 13 more of those. Oh, boy. Though, actually, we are coming up with something pretty major. We're back in Crateria now, and this is actually a power bomb door you could see very early on. You might remember that one room where I went underwater in Crateria to get a missile tank that I could have waited for. That was the room right there. We are now in the area where we got the first hidden item, unknown item rather. And I like that you can technically see these much earlier on in the game than you're intended to, because if you can wall jump and just jump effectively, you can get over to both of those power bomb doors. And I love that, because that's a real good sense of exploration, because you can keep those in mind for when you actually eventually get the power bombs as a way of potentially getting out. You just need to figure out the way out actually first. However, now comes the long way. There is one more item in the temple part of Chozodia that I couldn't get before. Mostly just due to the fact it was out of the way and I needed power bombs to get to it first. And that requires us going back a decent amount of the way back through this temple. Back in that one room where there were three space pirates crouching trying to get through tunnels to me. It's there, and we have to go back along the way through. Thankfully, the way back out will be shorter, but we are required to go a decent chunk through the section first. And I don't think that's very well designed there. But mind you, that's like one item out of how many that I don't think is well placed. Mind you, every Metroid game, now that I think about it, has some really just stupidly placed items. And I don't mean stupid as in like, you can get it early, I mean just like annoying to get to. Because when I think easy to get to, like unintentionally, I think of the sequence break to get the space jump boost early in Prime. Only possible in the first version of the GameCube version, which sadly I can never seem to find. So I have to do the normal way around it. Ugh. But I'm thinking back, like, Metroid 1 and 2 had a fair amount of them just due to how limited those games were in design. Super had a few in Meridia that were pretty annoying. Fusion, most of them were probably in Sector 2 if I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Zero Mission, it's this one. Prime 2 had a fair amount, but that's just because that game was pretty stupid in general with some design decisions. Don't remember much about Prime 3 at the moment. I remember Prime 3 had some pretty pointless power-ups, like the ship missile increases, where you only use those ship missiles a total of, like, what, 4 or 5 times, and you could get increases for them for some reason. That was strange. I can't remember much about Prime Hunters at all, so I'll just skip talking about that one. Either way, we're finally coming up on the item. It's back in this room. I could not have come back in here before getting power bombs because I needed to get rid of that pillar in front of it. What you need to do is come over to this corner and missile up 3 or 4 times. At which point you will get to the top, which has a power bomb. Now I have to get back out. Thankfully, I can use the little missile you saw on the floor a few moments ago just to go back through that little lava room. But that's a really lengthy process. I would jump cut, but honestly, this game is action-packed enough to the point where I can still think of stuff to talk about on screen anyway. So I don't really mind that much. Plus, mind you, I'm thinking about it, that's like one design thing I have an issue with in this game compared to how many I complimented. Every game has a few flaws, and in this game, they're fairly minor to me. The biggest thing against it is probably the length, but for me, that's pretty perfect, because that means I could just play this on like a car ride to a place that's like an hour away. Mind you, the way that this game's in-game timer works is not second for second. The way it works is that it doesn't count pause screens anytime you're in a menu and door transitions. So basically only when you have control of Samus. Which can actually subtract a decent amount. Like I think the world record is 36 minutes real time, but it's like 26 in-game. So that's about 12 minutes of stuff you can't control. Most of it's probably the door transitions. Either way, now back in Chozodia, not Chozodia, Crateria, I am getting this missile tank, which actually haunted me quite a bit in my early playthroughs. I believe if you went out of your way, you could have gotten that earlier, but it's not worth it because you'd have to go extremely out of your way before you even go to Torian, likely. Actually, wait, no, you probably wouldn't be able to because you'd need this length of ground in order to get a speed booster. Unless you're probably good at really tricking out the game, which there are people who are good at it. After all, people found the Shine Spark chain in Fusion to find that secret message fairly easily, eventually, I'd assume. No, it's very subdued, but I really like this musical track. It's just very ominous, even though it only plays in like this list in one other area. Though thinking about it, that's one thing I think this game does pretty well. Not as good as Fusion, but decently. It does a decent job of telling its story through its gameplay. Because those cutscenes, obviously, that we've seen of Samus do show, like, the overarching plot, more or less. But we really get to see, like, just the destruction that whatever Chozo lived here went through. Because we never quite learn exactly what happened to the Chozo that lived on planet Zebes, or in general, really. The Chozo just kind of disappeared. Because aside from the Torizos in the statues and the Chozo ghosts in the Prime series, I don't think we've ever seen a living Chozo in one of the games outside of the cutscenes in this game. Which is odd. You'd think we'd finally see some of them in action. Because that could make for a good plot. I immediately think of this one, and this is going to go into weird DeviantArt territory, fan comic I read by, I think the guy's name was Nikon Aquamagma or something, where it was basically like post-fusion Samus in an exploration mission where she actually finds a living member of the Chozo. It was actually a surprisingly good read for a DeviantArt comic. That's the only time I'm probably going to bring up DeviantArt in one of these videos. Either way, our next destination is back in Brinstar, but we don't have to go through Norfair this time to get to it. By doing the Shine Spark I basically did a few moments ago to get that Power Bomb, we can do something very similar by going through the blocks we came through when we beat Mother Brain. Because now, we're back in that way from Torian. And you can either go to Torian first, or to Brinstar first. I'm going to Brinstar first, just because it's closer. I'm not sure if there's a possible time save between going to which one first. There probably is. And down this elevator shaft without an elevator is the very start of the game. I like that. That's kind of funny. And as for our goal in Brinstar, we already have everything here. Our goal is the elevator to Kraid so we can get the last item down there. And through another means, the last few items in Norfair. As for where the last item in Kraid is, which by the way, I'm going to do a save here really quick. That's mostly just because I've done a lot since the last save in terms of completion, so I figured might as well. It's actually in the room directly below us. You might remember the acid pools, even though I called them lava pools earlier probably, that were in there. There is a bunch of blocks you can destroy with, I think, technically anything you want, but it primarily wants you to use a screw attack after getting the gravity suit. Because, reasons. We can come down here, and there is a speed booster block in front of a missile tank over there. This is one of the few times you're required to actually use the Morph Ball Shine Spark, even though I like that this game actually has you use it. I think the Morph Ball Shine Spark is actually in Fusion. You just never need to use it. And if it's not, well then, color me surprised, because I could have sworn to remember it being in there. And now we're done in Kraid. That's all we came in here for. However, Kraid has a pretty useful thing for this playthrough, thankfully. There is actually a shortcut, an inter-area shortcut to Norfair in this area. Similar to the intersector tunnels in Fusion. This is the only area in the game that's not Chozodia that has one of those. And as for where it is, it's back in that room that annoyed the hell out of me in the original Metroid. Down here in the bottom right. You might remember I mentioned there was a save room on the top right of that little shaft that I never went in, but I mentioned we'd go into it later. This is why we needed to come here later. The Rios. Die by my spin attack. If you screw attack the right wall in this save room, you find a hidden passageway. And now we're in Norfair. You need the power bomb in order to use this, though, so you need post-game anyway. And conveniently enough for me, this leads directly where I need to go in order to get the last 2 or 3 items here in Norfair. Because you might remember there was a second pool of lava down here. If I went in here with the Various suit, I would not be able to survive. But now that I have the gravity suit, I can come in here and get the last 2 items. However, there's an interesting run about this game that's just basically 100%. You don't have to beat the game, you just need to get all the items. These are the last 2 items the players who do that category go for, because they die as soon as they get that power bomb. There is a missile tank in here I did not yet get, though, and it's on the very right of it. Like there. Norfair, despite being the major tank it was in the original Metroid, is not the area with the most items in this game, but it is still pretty beefy in terms of everything else. Thankfully, as you saw, I got most of the items done along the way. Which I'm learning a lot more Metroid games can do more than I thought, other than Prime 2, because I swear Prime 2 is the most backtrack heavy in the series. Helps that it has 2 worlds you're technically going through. And good lord, I hate that one missile expansion that requires you to get to the dark version of the first room in the bog area. Or was that a key? I think that may have been a Sky Temple key, actually. Either way, back on topic. Now that we've completed Norfair and Crane and Brinstar and Redley, the only areas we have... Well, actually, and Criteria, now that I think about it. The only area that still has items are both Chozodia and Torian. Similarly to Super Metroid, Torian has items in it, and we need to go through it to get to them. You could potentially go back all the way through Brinstar and go through the original entrance to Torian, and that does get you there, but it's a bit of a longer way about it. Going about it through the way we left Torian, however, through during the self-destruct sequence 2 parts back, that is the way to go for me, so I'm going to head off in that general direction. Also, in case you're wondering how the hell to get back up through that secret passageway, there's a cannon here. I do find it incredibly funny that the end of the game is technically right next to the beginning. Well, end, because Mother Brain was the supposed final boss. I'm not even sure how much they showed off of the Zero Suit Samus section in the original stuff footage. Probably not too much because they wanted to make it a bit of a surprise, but it's pretty cool. Also, fun little weird thing. This Super Missile door, if you destroy it with a Super Missile during the self-destruct sequence, it'll still be green when you get back over here. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in Part 7, we're going to finish up the cleanup, and then head off and finish the game. See you guys then.